Hello guys, in this Nestjs tutorial, we are going to perform different kinds of queries to fetch data from the database using TypeORM. First, we are going to use the repository API to perform the queries, and then we also see how to perform queries using Query Builder. On the screen is the list of things we are going to cover. We are going to see how to filter results instead of just fetching any result from the database. Just imagine where the user can filter results. In this example, cities. Let's say you want to filter the cities by the time zone or by the country or continent, that kind of thing. Also, we are going to see how to use search input. For example, the user has a search bar where they can input something. We perform the search in the database and return machine records. We are going to also take a look at how to select relationships. In this example, city belongs to country and to continent. We are going to see how to select city as well as the continent that belongs to, or vice versa. That means we can pick a continent and also get the cities that belong to that continent. We're also going to see how to select specific columns instead of returning all the columns in the tables. Whether it is the main table we are querying, the primary focus, or the related tables, we can see how to select specific columns. Also, we are going to look at how to search and filter, the same search and filter, but this time we are going to use conditions that are based on the related columns. For example, we can filter cities, the list of cities returned, by the continent name, even though continent name is not in the cities table. We can do something similar for search by searching the related tables. That is what these last two items are for. Alright, before we get started, I want to quickly explain my setup. Now you don't need to worry about this simple Nestjs application that I have created for this demonstration, but I'm going to explain a few things. What you just need to know is that in this setup, I have three entities. That is one for continents, another one for countries, and another one for cities. And then for each of those entities, I have a corresponding table. So I have these three tables: countries, continents, and cities. Our focus is in fetching data from the database using TypeORM. So you can just ignore all the other details about setting up this project and all that. For cities, I have this cities service. Right now, it has only one method, find all. It just returns any city, right? There's no search or filter, whatever, happening here. Then I have the controller for cities. It has one method, find all, as well, which is for returning, finding cities. It basically gets the cities, all of them. Then for city as well, this is the entity class. I have the table named cities. This city entity has these fields: ID name, description, active, which is a Boolean, time zone, continent ID, country ID, and these ones are relationship stuff. So just to point out a few things here, I will skip ID, name, description. Those are just normal things. Then here I have many-to-one relationship, vice versa, that is one-to-many relationship between city and continent. I have something similar for country. So a continent can have 0 or more cities, that is multiple cities. A country can also have 0 or more, that is multiple cities. And this is how you map the relationship in Nestjs with TypeORM. All right, with that simple explanation, let's call this endpoint in the controller. That will help us better understand the problems we are trying to solve. I will head over to Postman now and call the endpoint to get cities. I will send this request. What we get is the list of all the cities. But think about it. City has these fields. What if we want to filter cities by time zone, for example? So I'm going to take this time zone GMT -5 and send the request. It doesn't change anything because the implementation we have now just returns everything. This is New York. What if user searches for York or whatever in the search bar? We're supposed to match cities that has that text in it, but that is not working because right now we just return everything that is in the cities table. These are the problems we are trying to solve with these action items. So let's just get started. The first thing I want to do is to filter results based on user input. So for that, I'm going to, let me just leave this method the way it is and create another one. I'll come down here and say find many. Of course, you can name this whatever you want. Then I'll go to the controller and replace this guy with that. Of course, if I call the endpoint, no difference, right? I think it is restarting. All right, so there's no difference. But what we want to do first is to filter. Filter is different from the search. Maybe they mean the same thing, but by filter I mean anything aside the search. So to match the exact input, for example, GMT +5, but this one is partial. If you enter York instead of New York, it is still going to find the record. That is for search. But for filter, has to match the exact records. So for filter, I'm going to come down here. Let me have const condi to be equal to empty object for now. So instead of just find, I want to find where those conditions are met, these conditions here. I'm going to populate the conditions in a moment. But what are these conditions? They are going to be based on the user input, what we get from here. So I'm not going to hard code the conditions for this filter. What I will do instead is to make use of the user input. For that, I have this DTO class already created for find cities. It is called find cities DTO. So we can filter by all these and we can search by the search field. And then we can also see how to search by relationship. That is the continent name, even though we are trying to fetch cities. So I'm going to say that this is going to have DTO, which is of type find cities DTO. Let me go ahead and grab the items inside that DTO. So there should be name. Oh, not that, please. Should be equal to DTO, and inside here there will be name. There will be time zone and the Boolean field active and country ID, and then I think continent name, as well as search. We're not going to make use of continent name and search yet. We'll get to that in a moment. So then I will have to, I actually need this. I don't know why I removed that. So what can we do? What I want to do here is simple. If name is supplied, something like this, so I can say if name is supplied, then conditions dot name to be equal to that name. But of course, this is TypeScript. It's saying that name does not exist on this type. So what we can do is something of this nature. I'm going to modify this in a moment. String any. So that error goes away, but this is going to mess things up if you are not careful. Because for example, if I say condition dot a column that doesn't even exist in the cities table, it doesn't complain. So you can easily make a mistake. So instead of this object type there, what I want to do, instead of this generic type. What I want to do is I will just hover over this to figure out the type of data, the data that is for this where clause. So I'm just going to copy from here to here. I'm just going to steal that information and then come over here and paste it and import that from TypeORM. Now you can see that it caches the mistake here, even though it was intentional. So I can say city.name to be equal to that. Now I can repeat this for all these other fields, but that will take me 3 lines per field. What I can do instead is to have some kind of shorthand that will give me the same result. So I'll come in here and use the spread syntax. Not that. I'm going to say if name is supplied, if name is supplied, then I want to have name to be equal to name. Otherwise, I'll just leave it empty. This is just going to give me the same result like before. Of course, I can remove this since they're the same thing. I will do the same thing for other fields. So for time zone, I'm going to say if time zone is supplied, then time zone is equal to time zone. Because it is the same, I can remove it. If active, I can do the same thing for active. No, not really. So because active is a boolean, if I say something like if active, it means that this can only apply if this is true. But we want it to apply whether it is false or true. The user can select to find cities that are not active or cities that are active. So this simple if statement is not going to work for us. What I can do instead is to check if the key active is in DTO. That means if the key is there, whether it is true or false, we don't care, right? So if the key exists in a DTO, we just find it. And finally, I can do the same thing for country ID. The other two, we get to them later. So now, I expect that our filter is going to work for any of these fields. All right, let's go ahead and give this a try. I will save that and head over to the browser. Here I have how many? Let me count how many I have. I have 46 records, right? But let me remove the search. It's not doing anything right now. If I go ahead and send this request again, we are going to get only cities in the time zone GMT -5 because of that filter. So I'm going to send the request. What happened? Oh my. Let me see what happened. So I think I know what happened. In the controller, we did not supply the DTO, which we need to grab from the query string here. So let me go ahead and do that. Over here, I'm going to tell Nestjs to give me the query string from the request. I'll say query to be of type find cities DTO. And then in the method call, I can just supply that query. I will save and try that again, see if it works now. Send the request. You can see that we get only 3 results, and each one of them has GMT -5. Of course, we can combine this. For example, let's say I want to find a city named Toronto among all the cities that have GMT -5. So I'm going to come to the name field and paste Toronto. If I send the request, this time I get only 1 record because there's only 1 record that has the name Toronto and time zone city. By the way, I don't mean as in factually, as in real world. What I have here is just some dummy data I'm using for this demonstration. There's probably more than 1, I don't know. So, but our filter works. You can go ahead and apply for other things as well, like country ID, etc. But this is proof of concept enough. So far, our filter works, but let me go back here. I'm going to remove this. Oh, I will just leave that. If you look at the cities, the fields in cities, it doesn't have continent name. Of course, it should not have continent name. That should be in the continents table. But what if we want to search by this continents table? You know that cities and continents are related through the one-to-many relationship. So for example, say I just type Asia here, and I will remove the other ones. Just type Asia, remove. We're going to get back the 46 records. There's no filter here. So we're going to get all the cities in whatever continent. That is the next problem we are going to solve, so that user can search by continent or by country. The same logic applies. So I'll go over to the code, and this is going to be really straightforward. What I want to do is, let me copy this guy and come down here. So I'm going to say, if the continent name is supplied, if continent name is supplied, you come here and say continent. TypeORM allows that. So for continent, I'll put another colon. Then I can search for fields that are in continent. In this case, I can say name to be equal to continent name. Note that this is not just a field. This is an object, the relationship in this entity, right? This is for continent. All right, so I can go back here and let's give it a try by supplying the continent name. Over to Postman, I'm going to send the request again with Asia as a continent. This time we get 13 records. But of course, from the city names, you can already guess. This is Baghdad, Dubai, Mumbai, Beijing, Tokyo, etc. But this brings us to the next problem we need to solve. We can see that we have list 13 items in this list, but the continent name is not showing. It is not showing because it is found in a different table. The next thing we are going to do is to see how to select related columns. Let me move this up. So we're going to select related columns. Before we do this for cities, let me quickly show you using continents. So this is continent service. Right now, it will just return all the continents. I will go ahead and call the continent endpoint. So this gets all the continents, but let's get continents along with the cities that belong to that continent. For that, I'll come over here and say select relations. So using this repository API, select relations. Here we can list out the relations we want to select. There are different syntaxes for this. First, I'm just going to use this syntax. So I will save that only cities for now. And let me try it again. You can see we get the cities. Here is another syntax to do that. So we got the continent and the cities. Another thing we can do is, instead of this array of strings, I can come here and pass that object, they call it braces. I'm going to say cities. True, that is going to select cities. We can select multiples, for example, countries, because countries has similar relationship with continents, just like cities, and say true. I will save that and go again. So this time we get cities and we also get countries. But this is returning all the fields in both the cities and the countries. Let's go back and select specific columns instead. So for that, you can pass this next option. This is going to be select. Here you can, once again, you can use the array to specify the things to select, but this is going to return all the fields in whatever you select. Instead of that, what I want to do is to use the object again. Then for at the top level, that applies to the primary entity, in this case continent. So I'm going to say to select ID, you can just say true, and not that, true. And then name, true. By the way, if you say false, that field will be omitted, it will not be selected. But let me just leave this as true. Then for the relationships, you can come here and say cities, right? And you put the colon. Here you can specify the fields from cities table that you want to select. You're just going to select ID and the city name. Going to say name, true. We can do something similar for other relationships like countries. For countries, let me just select only the ID. We're going to see how to do something similar when using Query Builder instead of this the repository API that we are currently using. So I'll go back now and try to call the endpoint again. This time you can see that for cities we have the specific fields we selected, and for countries we have only the ID because that is the only thing we selected. To test the false, I can say name. If I say true, that will be selected, but false, it will not be selected. By default, it wasn't selected because we did not list it here. But what if there are certain conditions, maybe a Boolean condition that tells whether or not this should be selected? So that's where this becomes helpful. I will go back now and try to, let me call the endpoint again. What just happened? It seems I left the thing at false, so true. And send it again. You can see we get the name and ID for countries. All right, so I'll go back to cities service now. What we have seen that we just did for continents, we can do something similar for cities. Unlike continent that is one to many, that is one continent can have many cities. The reverse is the case for cities. A city can only belong to one continent. So we are not expecting to see the nested array of data for each of the fields for cities, unlike in the case for continents. So I'll go here and say relations, continent. I will select the ID for the continent and I'll select the name. Oh, come on. That should be relations, not continent. What am I doing? True. So that is relation, not select. By the way, if I don't specify any select here, he's going to assume that I want to return all the fields in that relations, that I want to return everything. So I'll go ahead and call the cities endpoint again. This time we are going to get the continent populated as well. Continent has only two fields, the ID and the name. But if you want to select specific fields, you can do something similar to what we've seen before. You can say to select ID true for city, and for continent, and just a continent. Let me also select the city name, true, and maybe let me select time zone in addition to that, true. For continent, ID true and name. So I'm going to save that, and this time I can just remove that relations. Send the request. The server was restarting. What just happened? Oh, I need the relations, sorry. So I need the relations, but I specified the fields I want to select. So I have the fields from city and the fields from continent. let's just be sure that this is working as expected. So I'm just going to select the name of the city, because city of continent has only 2 fields. I will send the request again. You can see that that actually works. Okay, so we have covered a couple of things from our objectives: filter and selecting the related fields. What I want to do next is to look into search, how to search multiple columns based on the user input. For this, we are going to, let me have another method called find many 2. Find many number 2. We already have one up there. This time we are going to make use of Query Builder instead of the repository API. But I still need these items here. So I'm going to copy this line and bring it down here. The syntax for Query Builder is different. First, let me create a Query Builder object. Const Query Builder equals to this dot repository dot create Query Builder. You can give it an alias like city. So we can do something like city.name, city.continent, etc. Let's look at how to do filter using Query Builder. Then finally, we see how to perform search for one or multiple columns. So I'm going to come down here, and by the way, you can check TypeORM documentation to learn about this Query Builder and the different methods you can call on it. For the first one, name, I'm going to say if name is supplied, then I want to say Query Builder dot where city dot name equals name. So we pass something for that placeholder, name to be equal to name. I'm going to copy this and paste a bunch of times for the other fields. So copy and paste. For time zone, I'm going to say if time zone is supplied, I want to find cities. This is going to be and query, where city.name is this and time zone is that and active, depending on which one is supplied, right? Similar to what we have before, just different syntax. I will do the same thing we did above for active. If active is in DTO, let me close this guy. If active is found in DTO, so I'm going to say city.active equals that value of active. And then country ID, if it is found there, I'm going to say city.country ID, and this one is going to be a little bit different. So let me just make it clearer. Because continent name is not a column in cities table. So what I want to do, just to make it clear, if continent name is supplied, then I can say Query Builder dot join what? Join continent. We give it alias continent. Then I can say where continent.name is equal to the continent name. So we are just doing a left join here. We are joining the continent table and we are selecting cities where continent name matches the supplied continent name. By the way, we can, let me just have this join whether or not that field is supplied, because we also want to select fields from the continents table whether or not user searches by continent name. So I can come down here and just leave that guy here, the join statement. All right, and I guess that is it. Here I can actually return. I can return Query Builder dot left join dot get many. Okay, so this method is ready to be tested. What I can do now, let me go to cities controller and replace the find many with the second find many, that is find many number 2. I will head over to Postman and to cities endpoint. First thing first, no search or filter. If I send this, oh my, what happened? Okay, I think I know what happened. So the issue here is that I need to use this alias. It says left join continent. It doesn't know what I'm talking about. So left join city dot relationship called continent. If you remember from the cities entity, we have that relationship continent right here. So left join city dot continent. I'm going to save and send the request again. And this time we get how many records? All the records, obviously, 46. Now let's go ahead and try something we did before. I'm going to filter cities by time zone, GMT -5. We get 3 records like before. Of course, if you type a time zone that doesn't exist, you will not get anything. So it means that the filter for time zone works. And of course, I can already tell that the one for name works, unless we have a typo in the code. Let me not bother about that. For continent, I want to search continent Africa. I'll send the request. We have 3 records for the continent Africa: Nairobi, Cape Town, and Cairo. So the filter works. Now let's look at how to select relationships so we can see the continent name, right? And finally, we look at the search. To select relationship is really straightforward, similar to what you can do with the previous example. So here I'm going to use an array because we are not using this object syntax. It is not available down here in the query builder, if I'm not mistaken. So what I want to select is everything inside city, and for now I'm going to select everything inside continent as well. I will save that and go back here. You can see that we get city and continent nested inside each of these cities. But what if you want to select specific columns? It is really simple. You can say city.id and select city dot time zone, and you can do something similar for continent, like continent dot name. So I'm selecting only 3 columns, 2 from city and 1 from continent. I will send the request. You can see that's exactly what we have here. All right, so we have covered filter and select specific columns, including selecting from relationship column. Now let's look at search. If the search field is supplied, so I'm going to say if search. So the SQL is going to be a little bit different because it is going to have a bunch of or in the statement. First, let's identify the candidates that are good for search. Name is an example, and then time zone. We also want to search in the relationship table. That is the continent table by continent name. The SQL is going to look something like this. Select, let me say all from cities, and then we have where let's say name equals some value, let's say time zone, whatever that is supplied for the filter, right? This should be and time zone equals some other value. And then for the search part, we need to group them together using or for all the fields in the search we are considering for the search. This is just SQL, otherwise you get unexpected result. So here we can say for the search where name name equals whatever, or time zone equals whatever, or continent name. You get the point. If you don't do it like this, if you remove the grouping, we are going to say where everything on the left is met or something on the right is met. Okay, but that's not what you want. You want all the conditions to be matched. In this case, it's going to be grouped together. Let's just write the code. So I'm going to say query builder dot where for the grouping I'm going to say new bracket for the grouping. This is imported from TypeORM, by the way. This is going to give us access to the query builder, but let's call it QB, so just to distinguish. Then inside here we can say the QB query builder dot where. Then for the search, we want the search is going to be case insensitive. So I'm going to say lowercase, like converting it to lowercase, where city dot name equals, no, it's not going to be equals because we are searching, we're not matching exact record, exact value. So for something like New York, if someone types just new, we are going to match all the cities that has new in the name or in the time zone or the continent name. So I'm going to say like what, and then we put the placeholder here for search. Why is it double? Okay, I did not close the first one. So where city.name, like once again, we say lowercase here, and then the substitute for the placeholder, which is going to be the search. But we are not going to leave the search like this. Otherwise, the value must match exactly the value for the search. Instead, we do, this is just SQL stuff. So I'm going to say percentage, that is to match from the beginning, whatever before the text, and then the imputed text, which is search, and then the end as well. So this is going to match partially whatever the columns we specify here. Like before, if you say new, it's going to match New York, New Jersey, you get the point. That is for the city name column. We can do something similar for other columns. So I'm going to say or, remember this is going to be or conditions, right? The next one is going to be time zone. So I'm going to say where city.time zone equals that. Or for the continent, so we can say where continent dot name equals the search as well. So this is going to search in the 3 columns. All right, so let's go ahead and give this search a try. I will head over to Postman. First, let me count how many stuff we have here. Let me remove Africa and send the request. So we have 46, all the records. If I go ahead and search for, let me search for Asia. We don't have any records. Okay, I spelled that wrong. So it's supposed to be Asia. So you can see for Asia, we have 13 records. And these are the cities in the continent of Asia. You can also see the continent. Of course, we can combine this with the other fields that we've seen before. For example, I don't think we have not tried country ID. So let me just put country ID of 26 and see if we get Mumbai. I'll send, we get only one record, which is the city with country ID 26 and in the continent Asia. So Asia searches, this is finding the record based on the continent, right? So this is based on the continent. Let's test something that is not going to be matched in the continent. That means something that will be found in the cities table. For that, I'm going to pick, instead of picking, let me just type partially New York, but just new. I expect this to match New York, and that's what we got. If you type something that doesn't exist, of course, you're not going to get any result. All right, so our search works, and I believe that we have touched on all the items we have in this list of our action items. Okay guys, this brings us to the end of this lesson. Thank you for watching. Until next time, enjoy coding.